Philosophical Theories provides an enlightening journey through the major philosophical frameworks that have influenced human thought and behavior across different cultures and eras. Each of the 8 theories selected for discussion represents a pivotal moment in the history of philosophy, offering distinct insights into the nature of reality, knowledge, ethics, and human existence. By exploring these theories, we can better appreciate the diverse ways in which philosophical theories are not merely academic. They resonate in everyday life, affecting how individuals make moral decisions, perceive truth and knowledge, and define their sense of purpose and meaning. They also play a critical role in shaping social, political, and economic systems, influencing how societies are organized and governed. By understanding these theories, we gain valuable perspectives on the forces that have shaped human civilization and continue to mold our collective and individual identities. Engaging with these philosophical theories allows for critical reflection on our assumptions and beliefs. It encourages an examination of how different philosophical ideas can coexist, conflict, or complement one another, offering a richer and more nuanced understanding of the world. Ultimately, this topic invites us to consider the profound impact of philosophical thought on our worldview, prompting us to think deeply about the ideas that define and drive human progress. Here are many philosophical theories that have significantly shaped our worldview. Plato's theory of forms. Plato's theory of forms is a central concept in his philosophy, addressing questions about reality, knowledge, and existence. According to Plato, the physical world we perceive through our senses is only a shadow or imitation of a higher, unchanging reality. This higher reality consists of abstract, perfect entities he calls forms or ideas. 1. Nature of forms. Forms are the true, eternal essences of things. For instance, all individual horses we see are merely imperfect copies of the ideal form of a horse. This form embodies the perfect characteristics of horseness and exists independently of the horses in the material world. 2. Immutability. Unlike the ever-changing physical world, forms are unchanging and eternal. They represent the ultimate reality and truth. For example, the form of beauty remains constant, while individual beautiful things in the world might change or perish. 3. Knowledge and understanding. Plato posits that true knowledge comes from understanding these forms, rather than relying on sensory experience, which he believes can be deceptive. He illustrates this in his famous allegory of the cave, where prisoners mistake shadows on a wall for reality until one escapes and sees the real objects, forms, that cast the shadows. 4. Hierarchy of forms. Among the forms, Plato places the form of the good at the highest level. It is the ultimate principle, giving life and truth to all other forms. The form of the good is akin to the sun in the allegory of the cave, illuminating and allowing us to understand all other forms. 5. Implications. The theory of forms has profound implications for various aspects of philosophy, including metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. It suggests that understanding the forms is essential for leading a virtuous life and achieving a just society, as envisioned in Plato's work, The Republic. Plato's theory of forms continues to influence philosophical thought, prompting discussions on the nature of reality, the limits of human perception, and the pursuit of knowledge. Descartes rationalism. Descartes rationalism is a philosophical viewpoint that emphasizes the role of reason and intellect as the primary source of knowledge, rather than sensory experience. René Descartes, a 17th-century French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist, is considered one of the key figures in the development of modern rationalist thought. Here are the main aspects of Descartes rationalism. 1. Doubt and certainty. Descartes famously began his philosophical inquiry by doubting everything that could possibly be doubted, in order to find something absolutely certain. This method, known as methodological skepticism, led him to his foundational statement, cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. This became the indisputable truth that he believed could not be doubted. 2. Innate ideas. Descartes argued that certain ideas are innate to the human mind and do not depend on sensory experience. These ideas include concepts such as God, the self, and basic mathematical truths. He believed that these innate ideas are more reliable than information gained through the senses, which can often be deceptive. 3. Deductive reasoning. Rationalism, as advocated by Descartes, places significant emphasis on the use of deductive reasoning to arrive at knowledge. By starting from indubitable premises, such as the existence of the self, Descartes aimed to build a secure foundation for all other knowledge, including the sciences. 4. Mind-body dualism. Descartes is also known for his dualistic view of reality, where the mind and body are considered distinct substances. The mind, or thinking substance, is capable of independent existence and is the true source of knowledge, while the body is part of the physical world and subject to doubt. 5. Implications for science and philosophy. Descartes' rationalism had a profound impact on the development of modern science and philosophy. His emphasis on reason and the systematic application of doubt laid the groundwork for the scientific method and influenced subsequent philosophical debates about the nature of knowledge and reality. Descartes' rationalism continues to be a significant topic in philosophy, sparking discussions about the relationship between reason and experience, the existence of innate ideas, and the nature of human consciousness. Aristotle's empiricism. Aristotle's approach to knowledge and understanding, often described as empiricism, emphasizes the importance of sensory experience and observation as the primary sources of knowledge. Although the term empiricism is more closely associated with later philosophers like John Locke, Aristotle's work laid the groundwork for this philosophical perspective by focusing on the empirical study of the natural world. Here are the key aspects of Aristotle's empiricism. 1. Observation and experience. Aristotle believed that knowledge begins with sensory experience. He argued that we come to know the world through our observations of the natural world, using our senses to gather information about it. This empirical approach was a departure from his teacher Plato's emphasis on abstract, unchanging forms. 2. Inductive reasoning. Aristotle emphasized the importance of inductive reasoning, which involves drawing general conclusions from specific observations. He believed that by observing particular instances and recognizing patterns, we can develop general principles and laws about the world. 3. Scientific inquiry. Aristotle's empiricism laid the foundation for the scientific method. He advocated for systematic observation and classification of phenomena, stressing the need to collect data and analyze it critically to understand the underlying causes and principles. 4. For causes, Aristotle introduced the concept of the four causes, material, formal, efficient, and final causes, to explain why things are the way they are. Understanding these causes requires careful observation and analysis of the natural world, aligning with his empirical approach. 5. Realism and substance. Aristotle's empiricism is closely tied to his metaphysical views on substance and form. He believed that substances are concrete realities that exist independently of our perceptions, and that their properties and changes can be understood through empirical investigation. 6. Critique of Plato. Aristotle's empirical approach was partly a critique of Plato's theory of forms. Aristotle argued that the forms do not exist independently of particular objects, but rather, they are inherent in the objects themselves, and can be understood by studying the objects empirically. Aristotle's emphasis on empirical observation and the study of the natural world significantly influenced the development of science and philosophy. His work encouraged a systematic approach to understanding reality, combining empirical data with logical reasoning to arrive at a comprehensive view of the world. Kant's transcendental idealism. Kant's transcendental idealism is a philosophical doctrine developed by Immanuel Kant, a central figure in modern philosophy. It represents a significant departure from the prevailing philosophical views of his time by synthesizing elements of rationalism and empiricism. Here are the key aspects of Kant's transcendental idealism. 1. Phenomena and noumena. Kant distinguishes between phenomena, the world as we experience it, and noumena, things in themselves which exist independently of our perception. According to Kant, we can never know noumena directly. Our knowledge is limited to phenomena, which are shaped by the structures of our own mind. 2. A priori knowledge and categories. Kant argues that the mind actively organizes sensory experiences using innate structures or categories, such as causality, space, and time. These categories are a priori, meaning they are not derived from experience but are preconditions for making experience possible. They shape how we perceive and understand the world. 3. Synthetic a priori judgments. One of Kant's key contributions is the concept of synthetic a priori judgments, which are statements that are necessarily true and informative about the world, yet not derived from experience. An example is the statement every event has a cause, which Kant argues is known a priori but is not merely definitional. 4. Limits of knowledge. Kant's transcendental idealism posits that while we can have knowledge about the structure and nature of phenomena, we cannot have knowledge of things as they are in themselves, noumena. This places limits on what we can claim to know about reality. 5. Critique of pure reason. In his seminal work, Critique of Pure Reason, Kant explores the limitations and scope of human understanding and knowledge. He argues that metaphysical speculation that attempts to go beyond the boundaries of possible experience leads to contradictions and confusion. 6. Moral implications. Kant's philosophy extends to ethics, where he argues for a moral law grounded in reason, independent of empirical considerations. His categorical imperative is a central concept in his ethical theory, emphasizing the importance of duty and universalizable maxims. Kant's transcendental idealism has had a profound influence on subsequent philosophical thought, reshaping debates about the nature of knowledge, reality, and ethics. His synthesis of rationalist and empiricist ideas continues to be a pivotal reference point in discussions about the capabilities and limits of human understanding. Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a consequentialist ethical theory that evaluates the morality of actions based on their outcomes or consequences. The central idea is that the best action is the one that maximizes overall happiness or well-being for the greatest number of people. Here's a detailed description of utilitarianism. 1. Principle of utility. The core tenet of utilitarianism is the principle of utility, which states that actions are right if they promote the greatest happiness for the greatest number. This principle focuses on the outcomes of actions rather than the intentions or inherent nature of the actions themselves. 2. Hedonistic utilitarianism. This form of utilitarianism, associated with philosophers like Jeremy Bentham, defines happiness as pleasure and the absence of pain. According to Bentham, the value of an action is determined by its ability to increase pleasure and reduce suffering. 3. Rule utilitarianism versus act utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism. This approach assesses each individual action based on whether it maximizes happiness or reduces suffering in that specific instance. It requires evaluating the consequences of each action on a case-by-case basis. Rule utilitarianism. This variant focuses on adhering to rules that generally promote the greatest happiness when followed. Instead of evaluating individual actions, it assesses the utility of following rules that lead to beneficial outcomes overall. 4. Impartiality. Utilitarianism advocates for impartial consideration of all individuals' interests. Each person's happiness is given equal weight, meaning that the well-being of every person affected by an action should be considered in the decision-making process. 5. Quantitative and qualitative measures. Utilitarianism often involves measuring the amount of pleasure or pain an action produces. Bentham proposed a hedonic calculus to quantify happiness, while John Stuart Mill introduced a distinction between higher and lower pleasures, arguing that intellectual and moral pleasures are superior to physical ones. 6. Criticisms. Utilitarianism faces several criticisms, including justice and rights. Critics argue that utilitarianism may justify actions that violate individual rights or lead to unjust outcomes if they result in greater overall happiness. Practicality. Calculating and comparing the consequences of every action can be impractical and complex. Moral intuition. Some argue that utilitarianism conflicts with moral intuitions about fairness and justice, especially in cases where sacrificing individual rights could lead to a greater good. 7. Impact on policy and ethics. Utilitarianism has influenced various fields, including economics, public policy, and ethical decision-making. Its emphasis on maximizing overall well-being has shaped discussions on issues such as healthcare, social justice, and environmental policies. Utilitarianism remains a significant and widely debated theory in ethics, offering a framework for evaluating the moral worth of actions based on their consequences and the overall happiness they generate. Nietzsche's nihilism. Nietzsche's nihilism is a philosophical concept developed by Friedrich Nietzsche, reflecting his critique of traditional values and beliefs. Nihilism, in Nietzsche's context, addresses the implications of the decline of religious and metaphysical foundations in Western thought. Here's a detailed description of Nietzsche's nihilism. 1. Crisis of meaning. Nietzsche's nihilism is rooted in the observation that traditional sources of meaning, such as religious and metaphysical beliefs, are losing their authority and relevance in the modern world. This crisis arises from the death of God, a metaphorical expression Nietzsche used to describe the collapse of religious and moral absolutes. 2. Revaluation of values. With the decline of established values, Nietzsche argues that there is a need for a revaluation of values. Nihilism exposes the inadequacy of existing moral and cultural norms, prompting a critical reassessment of their origins and significance. 3. Existential vacuum. Nietzsche believed that the erosion of traditional values leads to an existential vacuum, where individuals struggle to find purpose and meaning in life. This vacuum can result in feelings of despair, disorientation, and meaninglessness. 4. The Übermensch. To overcome the void left by nihilism, Nietzsche proposes the concept of the Übermensch or Overman. The Übermensch represents an individual who creates their own values and meaning, transcending the limitations imposed by conventional moral systems. The Overman embodies Nietzsche's vision of a self-determined, life-affirming individual. 5. Eternal recurrence. Another crucial concept in Nietzsche's philosophy is the idea of eternal recurrence, the notion that life repeats itself infinitely in the same way. Nietzsche uses this idea to challenge individuals to live their lives in such a way that they would be willing to relive them eternally, thereby affirming life and embracing its inherent struggles and joys. 6. Critique of conventional morality. Nietzsche's nihilism includes a critique of conventional morality, which he sees as life-denying and restrictive. He distinguishes between master morality, which values strength, creativity, and individualism, and slave morality, which values meekness, humility, and conformity. Nietzsche argues that traditional moral systems often stem from resentment and a desire to undermine the vitality and excellence of the individual. 7. Impact and influence. Nietzsche's nihilism has profoundly influenced existentialist and postmodern thought. It challenges individuals to confront the absence of inherent meaning and to create their own purpose and values. His ideas have influenced various fields, including literature, psychology, and cultural criticism. Nietzsche's nihilism remains a powerful and provocative challenge to conventional beliefs, urging a profound re-examination of how individuals and societies find and create meaning in a world devoid of absolute values. Existentialism. Existentialism is a philosophical movement that explores the nature of human existence, freedom, and individuality. It emphasizes the subjective experience of individuals and the search for meaning in an often indifferent or chaotic world. Here's a detailed description of existentialism. 1. Focus on individual experience. Existentialism centers on the individual's experience and perspective. It asserts that people are free to make their own choices and are responsible for creating meaning in their lives, rather than relying on external sources or predetermined structures. 2. Freedom and responsibility. Central to existentialism is the concept of radical freedom. Existentialists believe that individuals have the freedom to choose their actions and shape their destinies. With this freedom comes the responsibility for the consequences of one's choices, which can lead to feelings of anguish or existential angst. 3. Absurdity and meaning. Existentialists often grapple with the idea of absurdity, the conflict between humans' desire for meaning and the apparent indifference of the universe. This sense of absurdity can lead to a confrontation with the inherent lack of objective meaning in life. Existentialists argue that individuals must confront this absurdity and create their own meaning. 4. Authenticity. Authenticity is a key concept in existentialism. It refers to living in accordance with one's true self and values, rather than conforming to societal expectations or external pressures. Authentic living involves recognizing one's freedom and making choices that reflect one's genuine desires and beliefs. 5. Notable existentialists. Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre is famous for his assertion that existence precedes essence, meaning that individuals are not born with predetermined purposes but must create their own essence through their actions. His works, such as Being and Nothingness, explore concepts of freedom, bad faith, and the nature of consciousness. Simone de Beauvoir. An existentialist and feminist philosopher, de Beauvoir is known for her exploration of freedom, oppression, and the construction of identity. Her book, The Second Sex, examines the existential experiences of women and the ways in which societal structures impact their freedom. Albert Camus. Camus focused on the idea of the absurd and how individuals should respond to it. His works, such as The Myth of Sisyphus, illustrate his belief that one must embrace the absurdity of life and find joy in the struggle itself, rather than seeking external meaning. 6. Existential crisis and angst. Existentialism often addresses the existential crisis or angst that arises from facing the freedom and responsibility of creating one's own meaning. This crisis can be a profound experience of anxiety, confusion, or dread about the inherent uncertainties of life. 7. Influence on literature and culture. Existentialist themes have influenced literature, theater, psychology, and popular culture. Existentialist writers and playwrights, such as Franz Kafka and Samuel Beckett, have explored themes of alienation, absurdity, and the search for meaning in their works. Existentialism provides a framework for understanding human existence as a quest for meaning in a world that lacks inherent purpose. It challenges individuals to confront the freedom and responsibility of their choices and to live authentically and meaningfully in the face of an often indifferent universe. Postmodernism. Postmodernism is a broad and complex intellectual movement that emerged in the mid-20th century as a reaction against the principles of modernism and Enlightenment thinking. It encompasses various fields, including philosophy, literature, art, architecture, and cultural theory. Here's a detailed description of postmodernism. 1. Skepticism of grand narratives. Postmodernism is characterized by skepticism towards grand narratives or overarching theories that claim to offer universal truths or explain the entirety of human experience. Postmodernists argue that such narratives are often biased and constructed to serve particular interests. 2. Relativism. Postmodernism promotes the idea that knowledge, truth, and morality are not absolute but are relative to different perspectives, cultures, and contexts. This relativism challenges the idea of objective or universal standards and emphasizes the diversity of viewpoints. 3. Deconstruction. Developed by Jacques Derrida, deconstruction is a key concept in postmodernism. It involves analyzing and breaking down texts to reveal the inherent contradictions and ambiguities within them. Deconstruction challenges the idea of stable meanings and fixed interpretations. 4. Intertextuality. Postmodernism often explores the relationships between texts and acknowledges that all texts are interconnected. Intertextuality refers to the way texts reference and build upon one another, challenging the notion of originality and highlighting the fluidity of meaning. 5. Pastiche and parody. In art and literature, postmodernism frequently employs pastiche, a mix of different styles and genres, and parody, a humorous or critical imitation of other works. This approach challenges traditional notions of authenticity and originality, embracing a playful and eclectic style. 6. Hyperreality. Jean Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality refers to the idea that in contemporary society, simulations or representations of reality have become more significant than the real world itself. Hyperreality blurs the line between reality and its representation, creating a world where simulations can feel more real than reality. 7. Fragmentation and nonlinearity. Postmodern works often feature fragmented structures and nonlinear narratives. This approach reflects the complexity and multiplicity of experiences, resisting cohesive or linear storytelling in favor of more fragmented and multifaceted representations. 8. Cultural critique. Postmodernism critically examines cultural norms, power structures, and societal values. It often deconstructs traditional categories of identity, such as gender, race, and class, and challenges dominant ideologies, advocating for a more inclusive and diverse understanding of culture. 9. Influence on architecture and art. In architecture, postmodernism is known for its eclectic and playful styles, combining historical references with contemporary design elements. In art, postmodernism often features mixed media, irony, and a questioning of traditional artistic boundaries. 10. Criticisms. Postmodernism has faced criticism for its relativism and skepticism, which some argue lead to nihilism or an inability to address important ethical and political issues. Critics also argue that postmodernism's rejection of objective truth can undermine efforts to address social justice and factual accuracy. Postmodernism represents a significant shift in thought and cultural production, challenging traditional notions of reality, truth, and meaning. It emphasizes the diversity of perspectives and the complexities of interpreting the world, reflecting a more fragmented and pluralistic approach to understanding human experience. These all theories have shaped how we understand reality, knowledge, ethics, and society, and continue to influence various aspects of modern thought. Ultimately, these theories invite us to consider the profound impact of philosophical thought on our worldview, prompting us to think deeply about the ideas that define and drive human progress.